Well, with a career, with a distinguished career that involved multilateral agencies, regulators, and the BIS itself, you've now moved to become vice chairman of a commercial bank, Deutsche Bank. Why did you make that move?
Well, of course, Deutsche Bank is a major global bank, and I think that the management board, Joseph Ackerman, and the supervisory board have a clear vision that we must be operating in a level competitive environment which over the longer term encourages financial stability. And so we do believe, and I believed long before I came to Deutsche Bank, that the private sector must play a central role here in the dialogue with the regulators and with governments. Obviously, we have a situation where each group has its own interests, and what we have to do is to achieve a dialogue and a set of solutions where the public interest is served and where the externalities that lead to adverse competitive pressures are mitigated. This is a very hard problem, and I think we have something to say on that. I think we want to listen to what others have to say, and I hope that we can contribute in a very constructive way to that debate.
What do you see taking place on the information side of the business? Are we getting the kind of quality of information that we ought to have? When a bank states out its balance sheet, what are we seeing in terms of what it's telling us today? We don't know what we are seeing, in terms of the information that we see on balance sheets today.
Well, I think the quality of information has really improved tremendously, and banks' ability to process it has also improved. But I think the crisis has shown that it's still not good enough. It's still not adequate enough. It's partly because innovation occurs so rapidly. But I think that, on the private sector side, there's still evidence that banks are not good enough at straight-through processing, at looking at their portfolios in a very granular way to measure performance within an accounting cycle, at the same time being able to really view their risks on a consolidated level. So I think a lot more work needs to be done in that, and I think that is an area where the central banks can maybe help to foster a process, and the regulators, of course, foster a process in which more information is managed in a better fashion. I think that's an area where dialogue among private sector institutions with the authorities' involvement will be very helpful. On the authority side, obviously, if we are going to have macroprudential supervision, and I think we need it, we're going to have some new numbers. And I think, actually, although I don't like the idea of a leverage ratio as an additional prudential element for individual institutions, I think it's a very important concept at the aggregate level. But we don't have a good scalar measure of that. And I think that that's the kind of measure that regulators will have to develop in order to be able to assess if systemic risks are rising. They don't need to be really truly advanced indicators. They may be coincident indicators, but they will still help in indicating the policies that would mitigate a serious financial problem and would therefore be helpful. On the side of the credit rating agencies, I really would like to see essentially all the information that's used to produce credit ratings, including the models, put up there in the blogosphere or in the ether, and that means that final investors and their agents will have to use that information as well in assessing the quality of whatever credit ratings they are availing themselves of.
How do you see your career evolving now that you're vice chairman of Deutsche Bank?
Well, I think that my job now really is to try to help carry forward this dialogue, this international dialogue, which I hope will lead to a fundamental reform of the architecture of financial regulation, and which will make major financial crises less likely. Now, they'll never be eliminated, but I believe we can develop a system in which they have less severe effects, and in which it's less likely that they will be so prolonged that they undermine economic growth at the global level. Now, I think that's a tremendous prize to be won. And I actually think that being with Deutsche Bank, being in the private sector, given my past experience in the public sector, is a very effective place, or can be a very effective place, I hope, for us to pursue that. So it really is a recognition, I think, that, you know, in the short run we all have our competitive jockeying, but in the longer term, humankind has a shared responsibility and opportunity to make this system work better.
Thank you very much, Malcolm Knight.